Hello, Natroners, and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron. So, today, today's an open chat. I haven't been feeling the best in the world, and so I decided to make something that was sort of open, and I threw out a thing and said, "Hey, we're going to do this." And Mr. Thomas Morley came up with this thing. He's been playing around with the community plugin, the defocus node. We're gonna sort of play with this in the background and talk about defocusing and depth, or using a Z buffer of varying forms. There's all kinds of Z buffers that you get, but the most common one is that most people are probably going to be familiar with is the one from Blender, which is what most people use. And I'm waiting for Mr. Thomas Morley to join into the chit chat here because he hasn't, he's not in quite yet. But anyway, I'm going to pop over into Natron. So let's hop over here. And he sent me, I'm going to just point out, he sent me these two bits. We're going to just chuck them in here and look at them. So this is our right, I need to just minimize some things. So this is his Z depth buffer, and this is his frame that he was trying to add some depth of field to, and of course using the whole goal of this is to create sort of this multi-layer thing where there's blue in the background, blue in the foreground, or wherever you dictate it based off of the Z depth. So it's really nice. There is a built-in, well, I shouldn't say it's built-in. There is a community plugin called the Z Depth Buffer or zDefocus. Let's pull that up here. zDefocus, right here. And we had been messing around with this earlier, and let me tell you, it's not as easy as you might think. If you will go on YouTube and watch some of the videos on it, it makes it look like it should be easy, but it's not as easy as you think, because there's a lot of factors that come into play. Because people, even in Blender, people create their Z depth based off of two different types of things. You could use an actual Z depth buffer, which tends to, when it pulls into Natron, if it's done in 32-bit float length, it's this incredibly, it usually looks washed out and white, and it's not very good, and you have to normalize it, and you have to do all of this stuff to it, and it's just a pain in the butt. And this, in theory, would take and automatically combine or do that for you, and would give you a normalized image. Well, the problem is that Mr. Thomas Morley gave us PNGs, and so we have, and I don't know if these were rendered with either the Z buffer or if these were rendered with I believe it's a fog. But anyway, the thing is that this is a normalized image already. By normalized, what do I mean by it's normalized? I mean this is working from a value of 0 to 1, where the darkest point in this image is set so that it's 0, and the lightest point is set to 1. Now, you might say to yourself, how do we go about normalizing stuff if we don't have something that's normalized? Well, there's actually, if we go into the grade node for this, you can see that there's this button called normalize, and if you just put it over your image and so forth, you can just click on that normalize button, and it will automatically set your black and white points, and it will adjust them if there's colors and so forth. It can be a flaky thing, you know, but as long as it's not, the Z buffer isn't, super colorful, which there are some that actually stack the multiple layers or the multiple depth pieces into multiple color layers, and that gets into other things. There's all types of ways you can make a Z buffer, so it's not considered color data. Anyway, this one's already pre-made, but that's how you would do it if you were using Blender. You would use this normalize on a grade node. But this, as we say, is already, and I'm assuming this is, I think this is 16-bit. I don't actually know. Let's just take a look. Maybe we can take a look here. File info. or no, file info. Yes, it's a 16-bit per channel Z buffer depth. He's saying it's a Z buffer. It's a Z variant, and he's posted the things into onto the Facebook link, and I'll try and make sure that those things, as long as he doesn't delete them, end up in it. If not, I'll try and upload them for everybody to follow along. Anyway, we made some progress with this because boy, oh boy, does this thing not work the way I thought it would work. Yes, we've got this set up to 2. I'm going to just reduce this down to 1. So we're just looking at our defocus, hopefully, and hopefully, I cannot tell. It looks like I might be covering this up a little bit. So due to that, not sure. Mr. Thomas Morley, I'm going to just throw out to you. This might take a second for everybody. Mr. Thomas Morley, is my face covering up anything important? I'm hoping that I'm fitting in this thing. The only thing I think I might be covering is disable preview and maybe this blur down below. Let's see. I think I'm going to have to maximize this view just so I can see. 1 second. Let's see. Yes, I'm covering up a little bit of the blur. So this is blur here and this is disable preview. If I adjust those ones, I will try and make it more visible for people. So anyway, not so great. Either that or I'll switch it off, switch over to just pure Natron for the time being. So, but we like having me up there so that you can see me when I'm interacting with you, or trying to, and looking over at the comments over here on the right. Anyway, so the way this works, or the way this seems to work, is that there are 3 basic planes that this works off of. What it's doing is it's creating zones based off of the values of this. Now, I'm gonna just, because this is about education and explaining this stuff and figuring out how this works and can we do this ourselves some other way, I figure, you know what, maybe we could just kind of go over some of the principles of this. This is kind of like the easiest way of thinking about this. The way this works is, if we look at just the Z buffer, okay, what we're doing more or less is we're blurring something gradually, or fading a blur in, sort of. You really want to blur it. You want to blur it based off of the depth. The further away it is, the more it blurs. But a lot of programs don't always do that. What they typically do is they fade it. I'm not gonna. We can't get into, because to be honest, I can't tell you all the details on the logic behind how to get it to do depth-based blur per pixel blur. But there's ways to do it, and I'm sure we could do it. However, let's look at something. If we pop in a clamp node, all right. If I throw in a clamp node here, I think of the clamp node as being our best bet for getting this to, or for isolating things. Why? Because, well, we can literally, you know, set up basically what comes through our image. Basically, we can set up our minimums and our maximums. All right, and what we can do is just clamp it. So if I sit here and I basically what I want to do really is set up some zone where, let's see if I can try and say, all right, whoops, let's see, if I say started off like here, and let's say the minimum is there, and put this out there, and then we want to clamp the minimum. We want to clamp the maximum to white. See, that's not really doing what we want it to do. What we want to do is we want to normalize this. When we clamp it, it's clipping it at that point. So that's not really going to do what we want. So what we want to do, I think, is we want to chuck a grade node after this. Let's try normalizing it. So there we go. Now we've basically isolated this little bitty section of it. So we could use this as some form of mask. So let's try and figure out what we're going to do here. Let's set this maximum. Let's bring this down even further so that we're like isolating this one wee bitty bit here. And then we're going to go back over to our grade node and we're going to normalize it so it's like that. And then what we're going to do is, let's see, this is me rebuild. How would I rebuild this? So that I would say, I would take and I would do, well, obviously we're going to use a merge node. And what we want to do is blur our original image. So we're going to take our original image, which is over here, and we're going to blur it. Okay. And, I'm going to blur it a lot. All right, let's blur it a nice big amount, like, I don't know, like 20. All right, so this is, now we've blurred it 20. And then what we want to do is merge the original with the blur somehow. So in other words, what we want to do is say that we have two images here. We have our original and we have our blurred version. So we connect them up. The B to our background, to our non-blurred, and the A to our blurred. And then what we're going to do is use our basically our mask over here that we're making. We're going to turn this into, let's make sure first of all, is this working? We don't have an alpha channel right now. This is solid. So what we need to do is we need to add a shuffle node here. So I'm going to put a shuffle here, and I'm going to take, and I'm going to just tell it that I want my B to be the BR, or the alpha to be the BR, so that now when I go to my alpha channel, it is this little bit that I've blurbed that I've made. So then I can put that into the mask, or into the mask of this, and whoops, it's doing the opposite of what we want. Well, I could reverse this, but I don't know that I want to. I think for right now, what I think I'm going to do is just reverse them manually, like so. So there we go. So as you can see, I've blurred off this little bit here. So I've effectively made or applied a Z blur to some form of Z blur to the front of this. Now, is it fading perfectly? No, it's not. I would, if I'm to really do the blur properly, I think the best way to handle this would be either to use a plugin that's already pre-made like this zDefocus, or to do probably something that samples the grayscales and says, and then blurs it based off of that using some form of convolution map. And if you don't know what a convolution map, I don't. I'm guessing here. I'm just thinking of ways. Anyway, this is kind of, you know, we can see a little bit of a blur here. Let's just move, let's go with this for right now. Let's go back to our clamp node for a second, and let's extend that out. I think we can make that a little bit deeper. Let's make it go out to about 0.6. I think that's a good amount right there. So we'll go to our grade, we'll normalize our grade, so we're like that, then we'll put it to the shuffle, then we blend it, and so there we go. So this is what it looks like. That's actually not that bad looking for what it is. It's actually giving us something that looks like it's blurred there. And then we can control our blur by just, you know, reducing our size down. We can determine how much of a blur we want there. So there we go. We've blurred that. So now we've got a foreground blur defocus. So now we want to do our background blur. Well, how would we do that? Well, we basically, we can take this whole thing that we've made here, and we can copy it and reapply it. And this time, what we'll do is we'll set it up so that instead we'll go to our clamp. Well, actually, let's look at our clamp. And for our clamp, let's reset this to its defaults, and then we'll take our minimum, and let's just bring our minimum up. So let's pull our minimum up, and let's see, somewhere around, I don't know, 0.2. That looks pretty good. So we'll go over to our grade node. We'll watch what happens when we go to our grade node here. We'll go normalize this. And when we normalize it, it does that to it. And then it puts it into a shuffle. So now how do we blend that one in? Well, all we have to do is basically we can copy this. We'll put the original into the background. Actually, what we're probably going to do for this one is we're going to put the background to our, well, actually, no. Let me think about this. We want to have a background blur. We need to have a background blur. So our background blur is going to be this. And our source is going to be actually our background here. So because we already have our foreground blur done in this part, we want to take this as our source. So this is our new background. And then what we want to do is worry about blurring the background back here. So how much do we want to blur? Well, maybe we want to blur this a bit more, like, say 30, right? And then we'll take that, put that into here, onto the A. We go here, and then we take our mask, and we put it in here. And we're looking at it, and it's not looking, it's looking wrong. It's possible that we need to reverse these two. No, we shouldn't, because we did, let me see. Yeah, actually, we do want to reverse them. Let's try that first. That's going to be our background, then there, like that. Nope, that's wrong. Definitely not what we wanted. Let's reverse that. So, obviously, this is not enough, so we want to increase that up a little bit more. Let's take that up to 3 or 0.4, and then we'll normalize it. You know, and this is the reason that it helps to have two of the things. We'll go normalize. Oop, apparently I didn't do it right. Oh, we did too much. We want to go the opposite direction. We want to bring this down. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's look at our original. We want to bring this down. So it was at 0.2. Why am I not? Oops. Oh, I was adjusting the wrong thing. I want to bring down the clamp. There we go. We're going to bring this down to 0.2. We're going to bring it down lower than that. We'll bring it down to 0.1. That's pretty good. Let's try 0.1. Maybe even 0.9. Somewhere in there. And then we'll go back to our grade. Let's normalize it. And go over to and look at our output over here. And we can see that our value, it's still not enough in my opinion. So, boy, let's take that down. So we want to take that down even further. So let's take it down to like what was the other one? Let's see. This was 0.6. This is saying it's 0.2. Well, that's even further out than the other. So let's normalize it. That looks weird. Didn't look like it did anything. Interesting. So this is not looking, it's not blurring the way I would have expected it to, which is interesting. So what I'm thinking we may need to do is actually bring the maximum down a little bit as well. Let's try normalizing that, just because that will make it stronger in the background. So let's bring that down a bit more, down to 0.6. Usually let's bring it down to the maximum to 0.5. Let's try normalizing this. There we go. Now we're starting to get a blur right in here. So there we go. So what we've done here is we've basically built ourselves the equivalent of a Z buffer depth blur by just combining the nodes in this way. So that's basically the general gist of this. Hopefully this gives Mr. Thomas Morley an idea and other people an idea of how one might approach this in another way. Now that we've done it this way and seen how this is sort of how the principles behind this work, basically what this should in theory do over here, if we had it hooked up to the actual things. So this gets this zDefocus works on a really interesting idea. What the person did, if we pull this up, is they added these color maps into it. And one of the problems, we do need to copy one of these shuffle nodes for right now, because I want to get an alpha channel here on this, because the Z buffer doesn't work properly if there is it has an image based, typically. Okay, so if we look at the alpha, we're looking at the alpha right now. If we look at the alpha here, it shows that it's black, but and when the zDefocus node was created, when Natron imported images, a black alpha off of an image, because it's considered a solid, it treated it when it didn't have it, it was just RGB information. It treated it as not having it, which is actually not what it everything else does. Technically, when you're dealing with an image, a black background means that you actually have an alpha of 1. Even though it's black here, it's technically, it should be white, but Natron's not displaying it properly. So if we actually were to go into here, if we actually set this back to the original and look at it in the shuffle node, we can see that in the shuffle node is actually showing us our real alpha channel after it comes out of here. And you can see that now that when we switch from looking at it from the image source to our actual alpha here, what Natron is actually treating it as of, I forget which Natron version, but a few Natron versions back, well after the zDefocus node was created, the Natron programmers fixed the bug and made it so that alpha actually comes in as a solid, so that it mimics everything else out there. So now we get white. But because zDefocus doesn't recognize it, or was built before this, we have to get rid of our alpha channel in order for zDefocus to work. So what we have to do is in our shuffle node, we have to set this back to our alpha channel to 0. And that basically neutralizes it and makes it so that there isn't one. Now, if we connect our Z depth up to that, now hopefully our zDefocus will actually start to actually function correctly. And it's very important for that, because if you start trying to mess with this, things won't work. All right, so that's the first tip, the first thing you need to know. The second problem is because this is a normalized thing, zDefocus was originally designed with the idea of working with EXR files, which are multi-layered. They're like an open source Photoshop document that is very high bit depth. Because it's high bit depth, the problem is that Natron's designed to work in 0 to 1 space, and EXRs are typically 16-bit or 32-bit float. And which means that the non-colored data can go way beyond what is normalized, and only with PNG, because PNG is a limited space, it's a 0 to 1 16-bit format, does the Z depth buffer, or Z buffer depth map, whatever you want to call it, it gets normalized into whatever the space, the color space is. So because PNG is a 0 to 1, 1 is its absolute maximum value, whereas with EXR, you can go way beyond 1. You can go into floating point numbers way up in there. You're going to get a different result on your Z-Pass. And so what we have here is is basically PNG normalized. And this defocus, from my understanding, does not work on it. It wasn't designed to work off of a normalized Z buffer. So what does this mean? This means that basically the gamma, we have to understand what, there's this option here called gamma, and our gamma is not going to match this because it's not right. So what I'm going to do for the time being is we're going to actually, to mimic this, we're going to, hopefully, if Natron responds, we're going to put a gamma node in here, or yeah, gamma right down here. we're going to put a gamma node in here. And why are we putting in a gamma node? Because I want us to see what the gamma node does to this. All right. When we raise the gamma up here, actually, well, this could alter it. So I'm going to put the gamma before our shuffle node so that it doesn't mess with the alpha channel, hopefully. So anyway, we're going to, as we can see, as we bring this up, we start flattening this out. This all becomes flatter and flatter and flatter, with the exception of our darkest point still remains very dark. And this is actually kind of part of the problem. To fix this, this is basically the way we kind of have to fix this. It limits us in a sense. If we go over to zDefocus, we'll notice that as we play with the gamma value here, I hope we should start seeing, let's see, actually it's not showing it here, but well, you know what, let's play with it. Let's deselect that. Let's go over here. Let's just make sure this is working correctly. All right, I'm not getting, there we go. So around, you can see that it goes up here, in around 9 or so, we start seeing the defocus taking effect. And what's happening here, what we're seeing is we're seeing how this is being applied to over the image. All right, now that the reason we're seeing it over the image right now is because we are, well, I think it's, where is it? Hide. There we go. See this hide Z depth? If we uncheck the hide Z depth, now we're looking at the Z depth map. This is the actual gamma values. We can actually, let's reset this to the default. So this is what it's coming in as, or this is what the zDefocus sees it as. And when we bring this up to, we can see that it slowly moves this up until we get to something that looks more like this. But what we really want to do is we want to, I think yes, when we enable or turn off the shuffle node, we start seeing this better. And anyway, we want to hide the Z depth, and I think that's, anyway, this is my understanding. Might be talking out my butt here. They may have fixed this. This is my understanding of it. I know Z depth was, or zDefocus is an old node. I don't know if it was fixed. It may have been fixed, but anyway, I'm looking at this. So anyway, we're seeing, what we're seeing here is basically this is setting up the zone. This green, this like lime green, this is our initial focal plane for one of our blurs. It's either going to be our main blur, our principal defocus blur, our background blur, or our front defocus blur. And based off of my earlier testing, I believe that what we're looking at, what we're adjusting right now, is just the principal blur. So what we really need to do is we need to give this some blurring. Let's hide our Z, or let's disable the preview color. And what we're going to do is just crank up a blur here and give ourselves an initial blur. All right, we're going to give ourselves a really, really large blur, and we can see it. And so here lies the fundamental problem with the way we're dealing with this at this point, which is that it's not really grading this properly. There's no grade happening to this. So I think we're basically dealing with a linear slope, and it's not, we're not getting a nice defocused area like we want. And so the problem, I think, is that we, in order to blur this out properly, we may need to plop a clamp node in at the beginning of this. As silly as that might sound, we may need to clamp this ahead of time. Is that going to fix it? I'm not positive about this. The problem is, as I say, we're not. I'm not positive how much we can fix it. We either need to do it that way. I'm trying to think of ways we could do this. We need to control the slope somehow. You know what? I've got no idea. We can control this slope with a color lookup table. So what I'm going to do here, let's put a color lookup. Okay, so the color lookup, if we let's go back to our zDefocus for a minute and turn this off, and let's disable this. Let's see, let's hide this and turn that off. All right, why did I do all that? Because I want to look at our Z buffer coming out of here with the gamma. Let's reset this. Let's reset it to its default, which is this, which is a little weird actually to me. That's not what I was expecting it to be, because over here this is what it looks like, and in the zDefocus this is what it looks like. But that's okay. That's okay. What we're gonna do here is, I think we're gonna look at this, and let's just look at this as it applies to the read node. So what we're going to basically be doing is we're going to basically pop some nodes on here, and we're going to just pull this around, the master node around. Basically, we're adjusting the master node here. We want to adjust it so that the fall off, change the way this is falling off, so that the curves are adjusted. And maybe we can pull this in. We can see this pulls in the black area. We're probably gonna have to reset this because I don't know. Yeah, I'm just going to reset it. It's going to be easier to fix that. We can pull this back, and then we could adjust a light area. So by pulling our lights down, what we can do, actually, you know what? We might be better off just taking this and pulling it like so that it falls off more like this. And you can see this kind of works like grading or clamp or anything like that, where we have this control, but we get this idea where we can control the curve of this as well. So we can just dictate how the fall off is going to happen for the defocus a little bit more. Anyway, let's take a look at our defocus, go back to our defocus and start playing with this. So, all right, back here, we want to hide the Z depth. We want to re-enable the shuffle node, and we want to disable the color preview, and then we want to, let's see, what did we do here? What did I do here? Let me, I seem to have broken this, I think. Oh, right, we want to put this up to right, we want to set this back. We want to set this up to like 10, around 10, so we start seeing it. We start seeing it here. This is what we're looking for, is to try and get it so that this starts showing. Basically, when our background stops moving, that is pretty much where we want it to be. And I think it looks about right around 10 or 11, maybe 12. I think looks about the proper background strength. I think I'd rather do a little shy, and then what we'll do is we're going to re-enable this color lookup and start playing with this color lookup and see if pulling this around affects it. And indeed it is. We can see that this is affecting our fall off on the one end, but not only that, it's affecting the fall off on the other end as well. So we can control with this, we get the ability to control our focus zone for this. It's a little hard to see with this gradient in the background. Thought there was a way to turn off that. Display none. There we go. So we can pull this. We know what it is. We're just going to pull it this way a little bit. So we're just going to play with this and control it a little bit. Sort of dictate it. And now let's see what that does. All right. We've adjusted that to hopefully adjust. This is basically buying back a control that we lost because it doesn't act. The zDefocus doesn't actually have the control. The GAM control itself doesn't give us quite as much depth information or blur control as we would like. So that's what we're going to do. All right, let's try this now. So we've got our blur back. Let's. I'm not sure that we're seeing the blur the way we want. Now, I had started playing with it over here. I'm just going to look at something. I had some settings. I set the blur to 1 here. My thing, I had it disabled. I'm just looking at things. So we want to disable the background. I turned that off. I set this to, I combined the two controls. I set the blur to 0.8 here. And then I set this offset to, I think this is -62. So this is a crucial thing. This, I think it is, this helps dictate, yes, we can start seeing, so we can start seeing there's our background right there. There's our background coming back into it. So this background color is red. And by disabling that, we can, so we're going to just, so what it's looking to me like, there we go. So we may want to bring this up to about the same. This is a tricky thing. But this is based off of using the color lookup table with the settings that I already preset there. I'm just trying to get something here that looks decent here. So we can see that we're starting to get something blurred down there. Now, I want to just try and disable that. Notice that if we disable the background blur, that we don't get the background doesn't actually blur. Just using the principle, we have to enable this background blur in order to get the background to actually blur a little bit. So this is where it looks like, whoops, we want to, it looks like this may coincide with our gamma value. So what I'm thinking is we might want to set this to -10 to get it to match. And then we adjust blur. Is this blur the blur strength? I don't know. Let's see. Nope, that's definitely not the blur strength. All right, let's reset that to default. All right, so I don't think this blur here seems to be working with anything. I think that blur may be tied to the refine control, which, let's go to -10. That's where we were having luck. And I think I want to try just adjusting this a bit more. So now I think this may be a blur size. Yep, this is our background blur. This is our actual background blur. What is blurred? So here's our pixel blur. I think this is a pixel blur. I'm not 100% positive it is, but we can see that the problem is that the blur is it's milky. It's milky all the way through. I think that's partially because this doesn't maybe go as far as we wanted to. I don't know. I'm experimenting here. Again, not positive. I know exactly which part's doing what. But we're gonna try this. That's making it more milky. Let's go the other way. Let's try pulling this. Aha! That pulled it back. So we want to pull this further this way to, I think. There we go. Now we're getting nice control over that blur right there. Problem we have is now that might have shifted this so that our foreground blur might be a bit wonky. Anyway, let's take a look at what our map looks like now. This is what it looks like here. Going into this, that's not what I would have expected, but, you know, it is what it is. We're still experimenting. Let's see. So, right, we want to also enable our foreground. So we want to control this. All right, well, look at that. We have a foreground blur already. We got something there. Wow, holy smokes. Can we refine this a little bit? This may have been screwed up by this color lookup here. It is screwed up by our color lookup. So this color lookup is playing with it a bit, and maybe we may have to adjust this with the refine control. I don't know. Let's take a look. Can we refine this at all? This does not look like it. Let's try adjusting the focal limit. Reset this. Oh, wait, that did do something. Oh, the focal limit does seem to be functioning. Oh. So right around 40 something, it starts 40 to 50. All right, so we're going to set it to 50. And then we're going to take it back one dot. Yeah, so this is not... Oh, that's the focal plane. That's where our focal plane is. All right, all right. So let's reset that. We don't want to adjust that. All right, so this, setting that up, let's see if we can refine this a little bit. Maybe if we pull the focal plane this way, let's take it back the other way. Nope, we're not seeing... I'm not seeing anything there. So let's reset that to its default. I think we botched it up with this. So let's go back to that. And I think what we're seeing here is that we need to get more black in here. So I think what we want to do is the reason we're using a color curve is because we want to be able to put points into this. So we're going to add a point here. And we're going to start pulling this back a little bit. Or, no, maybe. Yes. I think we want to try. Okay. This is going to look wonky and weird. Maybe. Don't know. I'm just going to experiment. Let's delete that point, actually. Let's pull this back. All right. That's point. Pull that there. Pull this like that. So let's see. I'm feeling like what we really want is something like here. I don't know. I'm guessing here. We actually, you know what? We may want it the opposite direction. We may want to push it over more. So it's like that. Maybe what we want is something, I don't know. I'm experimenting here. Let's see. All right, let's take a look. Our defocus here. All right. Let's for the moment, let's disable that front again and stop playing with it from the background again. See, all right. So we want the background to be stronger. Yeah, we want the background to be much stronger. Like, I think, like there. And then we want to bring, so what we want to do is basically compress this, like so. It's looking, we want to, this is actually looking kind of like flattening the image to get it to where we want. I don't know. Playing. All right. We need to obviously play with it. We need to re-enable the other focal plane. So for right now, what I'm going to do is disable this one and enable the foreground one and see if we can start getting that to show up somehow within these limits. So if we bring this down, all right, so we're going to bring this up a lot, and we're going to, let's try refining it one way. Okay, we can see the refinement sort of happening, but it's happening over here. So this is what refinement is working too far back. Okay, that's good to know. And then we're gonna, okay, so here's our focal limit. Right, oh, we've played with focal limit in the past. So if the focal limit is reduced a bit, no, we don't want it. It's not, it is working when if we look at this, we can see it's working in those dark colors, but it's not working where we want this to work. So that, let's just see something here. Let's disable this. And let's see if this works. Oop. All right. Let's see if this refine. What does refine do? Refine really, if we keep it at 100, it just creates a hard drop off. So we're not getting the type of control we want. So we definitely need to use our lookup control somehow to fix this. So let's try and pull this node. What happens if we pull this up? All right. Is that helping? No, it's definitely not doing what I wanted. So we'll pull that back down. What if we pull this down? I did some stuff, but not what I thought it would do. I think we're running into a situation where our defocus node may actually be, this may be causing the problem. Let's see. No, we definitely want to. So, all right, I'm going to throw out a couple theories I'll have on this. I don't know this node very well. I haven't played with it a whole lot, as you can tell. I think what I'm seeing happen here, if we go back to this, and I'm just going to pop over to, we're going to disable these two, and we're going to just look at this, and we're going to reset this to its default. All right. What I'm seeing here is the Z buffer here looks like they're setting the value to the center point to 0. I have a feeling that's what they're doing, is setting the midpoint to 0. So everything from the midpoint forward goes black, and everything from the midpoint backwards goes towards whatever would be white, which is why we don't see anything here. In fact, we can test this by just taking a grade node. Let's put a grade node here, and if we normalize this, oh, that's interesting. That's not what I was expecting. We're getting color. There's color information in there. Well, anyway. But when we normalized it, we did get ultimately, if we just set this to black and white as opposed to colors, we can see it sort of brought it back, but it didn't really. It's normalized it, but it kept the black. Oh, it's clamping the black. Let's try normalizing it without clamping the black. Let's see. Nope. Well, it's got me a little baffled. This is one of those nodes. This is an open discussion, as I'll say. The goal today is to sort of explore the node. We're not really making as much progress as I do. We're making progress, and we have solutions. I don't want this to go on too long, and I don't know what our runtime has been at this point. I think we're close to an hour. And whoops, sorry. No. Yeah, we've been 51 minutes into this. This is something. This is a node. I'll promise I will investigate more and try to get more information on. But the problem I'm seeing at this point, based off of my understanding of how this stuff works, is that this does the node itself, from what I can tell, may not give us enough control to fine-tune a PNG style Z buffer. So my recommendation to Mr. Thomas Morley, who is the one who approached me about this, is I would probably stick with an EXR if I were going to do a Z buffer for right now, simply because we do know in all the examples that they did it, that they used 32-bit EXRs, or even 16-bit, because the EXR color space works in a different color range. It's not clamped at 0 to 1. So anyway, that's my suggestion. For anybody else, my same suggestion. If you want to play around with it, I mean, these are ways I've shown you how the basic concepts of how Z-blur works, or how Z-depth works, and how you can basically recreate your own if you wanted to. You can do it. We did it. We've got it working. We've got something that's sort of working right here. We've got a blurred background. Why does my background doesn't look? Hey, well, oh, we're not looking at the whole thing. There we go. Hey, we've got a blurred background. We've got something that's on Z-depth. We can mimic it. We don't have, I will say this, we don't have absolute control. This does not work off of focal ranges. There's no absolute, way to do this when you start getting into doing this in post. Because unless you are application specific with how the parameter or the Z depth is going to work, you can't really dictate it, and you have to really know how the program handles it and what values it sets to a given thing to really create an absolute using Z buffer, from my understanding. So this is something that you'd have to sort of eyeball and say, that looks like what I want. I want it to be about yay blurry and about yay blurry on the foreground. Anyhow, this is going to be a personal preference thing. For now, at least. Unless you do it inside of Blender itself, then Blender, I would hope, has a Z buffer handling of its own, or somebody else has a more thorough plugin that has a better understanding of how it works. So, right. Thanks for watching. Keep on Natroning.